and I think you're responsible for the murders of Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. I invite you to make a comment on that. You are absolutely mistaken. That's the only comment I want to make. I'm mistaken. You don't want to expand on that at all, Jack? Did you murder Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe? Absolutely not. Were you present when they were murdered? Absolutely not. Where were you on the 6th of the 12th, 95? Can you remember the day that we're talking about? Can you remember where you might have been that evening? No, I can't. Have you ever been to Rettendon at all? Do you know that area? No. Would you remember, Jack, being in a leafy lane? It's the only way to describe it, really. In December 1995, in the area of Rettendon Essex. I'd remember if I murdered someone, if that's what you're trying to imply. I've stated all the time you've been firing questions at me that I did not commit that terrible crime. Right. You keep asking me questions on it, and I'll keep saying the same answer, because I don't know anything else. Right, okay. I accept that, Jack, and I have listened to what you say. We have got a duty to ask you these questions, Jack, and this caution is as much for us as it is for you, okay? And it says that you do not have to say anything. You don't. It also says that if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court, it may harm your defence. Now, if you're not questioned, then you don't get the opportunity to either mention it or not mention it, which has implications, Jack, to both of us. That's why we ask the questions, and I accept what you say to me. I know nothing about it. I was not involved in these murders. But when we ask you where you were you in Rettendon on the 6th of the 12th? I haven't had an answer yet for 1995. I think I've said my piece. I don't take that as an answer to the question. That's a saying. You think you've said your piece. Well, I'm sorry. It's best I don't answer. Okay. It's best you don't answer. That's what you said. Why is that? I have to ask you the question again to avoid any confusion, Jack. Have you ever, or were you, in December 1995 in Rettendon at all? I have never been to Rettendon. Right, we've cleared that up now. I'm very grateful for clearing that up. So we've established that then Mr. Womes has not been to Rettendon. So I take it that, Jack, that you know where Rettendon is. Do you know where Rettendon is on a map? Is it possible that you could have gone to Rettendon and not known that you're in the village or the area of Rettendon because maybe you don't know Essex or that part of Essex that well? You see, because we have a version of events, an account by Mr. Nichols, and I think it would be fair to say that a great part of what Mr. Nichols has given as his account of that night, certainly corroborates or falls in line with a long-running police inquiry. My colleague and I will be putting that version of events to you, Jack, Mr. Nichols' account. And once again, it's going to be your chance to give your account of that night, challenge what Mr. Nichols says and say that it's not right. This is your chance to turn around and say what Mr. Nichols says is a load of old tosh. A load of old rubbish, let's put it in those terms, shall we? So let's start on the 6th of December 1995, Wednesday night, where Mr. Steele, Mickey Steele, contacts Mr. Nichols, and I was going to say request that Nichols comes to meet him, but I think that's probably the wrong phraseology, the wrong wording, shall we say. I think it's more like Mr. Steele says, you will come and meet me at a place called Ron Parkinson's in Marks Tay. Do you know of that place, Jack? I think Ron Parkinson's, for the benefit of the tape for anyone who's listening to it, is a motorcycle shop in Marks Tay, and Marks Tay is situated on the A12 just outside Colchester. Do you know that, Jack? Nichols stated that he got there at around 17:50 on that night, where Mickey Steele was waiting for him in his red Toyota Hilux, index number which we already know, November 551 Bravo Oscar Oscar. Steele, according to Nichols' version of events, tells him that he and Mickey Steele and yourself, Jack, are going to do a bit of business. They're going to deal with Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. Is that right? You're actually going to do a bit of business. What did he mean by that, Jack? Now, again, Mr. Nichols states that he was with Mr. Steele in the Hilux, and you, Jack, pull up in a B-Reg VW Passat motor vehicle, which apparently used to be Nichols, and I think either you bought it off of him or something like that. Is that right, Jack? Have you ever owned a B-Reg VW Passat? Have you ever bought a motor vehicle off of Darren Nichols? Is what Darren Nichols says correct? Did you turn up on Wednesday the 6th of the 12th 95 at Ron Parkinson's at Marks Tay in a B-Reg VW Passat? Now, Mr. Nichols is saying that he never had a choice. He arrived there obviously because he's scared of Mr. Steele for some unknown reason. He's there, and no sooner as he's got into the Toyota Hilux than you pull up in the B-registered VW Passat, and you're away. You're off down the A12, going to do a bit of business, and you drive down to the halfway house public house on the A127. Is that correct? You arrive at around 18:30 that night, Jack. Do you remember that? Is Mr. Nichols correct? It's not a very nice night that night, is it? With the snow falling. It had been a cold, wet, horrible, snowy winter's night. You must remember that. Mr. Nichols does. You're at the halfway house, Jack, with Mickey and Darren Nichols. Nichols was told to get out of the Hilux by Mickey and gets into the VW Passat with you. Is that right? In fact, he actually gets into the driver's seat. And as he's doing this, Jack, he remembers a Range Rover pulling up. The Range Rover which we now know contained Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe, because they were all there to do a bit of business. Do you remember a Range Rover pulling up, Jack? You drive off in your VW Passat, telling Nichols where to go, what to do. So really like you're telling Nichols what to do now. He's your underline. You tell him what to do, you're in charge of him. Is that right? You do actually tell him to stop at one point, don't you? You actually tell him to stop because you want to put some false plates on the VW Passat. Now, why would you want to do that, Jack? Or maybe this is all lies, is it? Is this all a pack of lies? Absolutely a pack of lies. Is there any truth in any of it so far from your perspective? No truth whatsoever. Right, we'll carry on then. Well, why Darren Nichols is saying this, I mean, he must have his reasons, but I just can't think. What do you think his reasons are, Jack? Sorry, I can't think of any reason. I don't know why. Do you know him? It's a cold winter's night, Jack. A bit of snow and these stick-on plates, they won't stick on, will they? So you don't bother in the end. So off you go again and you tell Nichols to stop the car. You're going to get out, or you get out, and you tell Nichols that he's got to drive off and you've got to stay in the area because you'll phone him. You'll phone Nichols to tell him when to come back and pick him up. Do you recall that? I believe that you'd certainly have gotten out of the motor vehicle, the VW Passat, somewhere near the lane that led to the murder scene. Mr. Nichols tells us that you were wearing some dark clothing that night and that you got out and you had a plumber's-sized bag is what he described with you. Do you own a tool bag, plumber's bag, something like that, Jack? You disappear, Nichols drives off. Not for long, but he drives off and states that he's having trouble getting a signal on his mobile phone. It was a bit hilly around that area, and obviously it was a bit difficult to pick up a signal on the phone, but he kept moving his position, not for too long, and his phone rings and you speak to him, Jack. You tell him to come and pick him up where you've been dropped off. Remember that? Is that true? Anyway, Nichols goes back to that area where he'd dropped you off and you get into the car. And Nichols says that you say to him that Mickey's going to come and join us in a minute. Do you recall saying that, Jack? Did you get into the VW Passat with Nichols and say Steele's going to come and join us in a minute? Mickey did appear, didn't he, Jack? He was wearing overalls. In fact, I think Mr. Nichols stated that you were both wearing sets of overalls. Mickey comes up, gets into the car. You've still got your bag that you left the car with. And Mick gets into the car and he's got a bag with him. Do you know what was in that bag, Jack? Well, Mr. Nichols was there, and he sees what he describes as a side-by-side shotgun in Mickey's bag. Is that right? At some point, Mickey actually turns round and says, "That's sorted those fucking cunts out. We won't be having no more shit with them." Do you remember that, Jack? Who was he talking about? He's talking about Tony Tucker, Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe, wasn't he? You just been down that lane at Rettendon, Jack, and blown them to bits with your shotgun. Is that what happened? 3 unarmed men, sat in a Range Rover, when you come out of the bushes, out of the dark on that snowy night. They were in that Range Rover which went down that lane and Mickey was in the back because that was all pre-arranged with him, wasn't it? All pre-arranged with your mate, Mr. Steele. He got out of that Range Rover, out of the back offside door, and you were so pumped up that night, Jack. You were ready for that night. 2 guns you had. You thrust 1 shotgun into Mickey's hands and you pushed him out the way. Those are the words described by Mr. Nichols that you said in the car. And Steele had described, "He nearly pushed me out the way to get to him." And then you fired 7 rounds into them, Jack, into their head. No messing, eh? Because you were really fired up for that night, weren't you? Mickey prearranged it. Because your mate Mick was in danger, wasn't he? Heaven forbid if anything should happen to your mate Mickey Steele. Because that's what he told you. I'm sure it wasn't just go and kill these three people, Tony, Tucker, Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe. They were planning to take him out. They were going to kill your mate Mick. That couldn't be right. Mick hasn't got the balls to do it himself, had he? I'll have to get my mate to do it. Get him to come down there. Is that how it went, Jack? Is that what happened? Did Mickey put one in them after they were probably dead? Pat Tate still twitching a bit. Just to show you could do it. Just to show you could, weren't it, really? You'd done all the hard work, Jack, hadn't you? You'd taken the real risk. But he just went round to the near side of the car and fired one into Pat Tate. He was, I would think, probably slouched in the back of the car by that time. True or not, Jack? Absolutely not true. What you've described to me is a horrific thing. It is horrific, I quite agree with you, Jack. It's, well, heinous, isn't it? 3 defenceless men get slayed like that by somebody with a shotgun? Absolutely. And I denied it all the way along in your questioning, and I've listened to your, how do you put it, story you're reading to me from your notebook. It's not a story, Jack. It's an account given by Mr. Nichols. All right, an account. Well, I'm just putting it in my own words. I've listened to it. I can't believe the reason why Mr. Nichols would say such a thing about me, and I could not do such a thing. The man's got to be lying. Were you with him that night, Jack? I've stated all the way along I don't know anything about it. So if I'm saying I don't know anything about it, how could I have been there? I asked whether you were with Darren Nichols on the night of the murders. I've just answered it in my own way. I couldn't have been there. That's the answer. That's the answer I'm going to give you. Were you with Mickey Steele that night? I've stated I don't know nothing about it. I'm asking you a question, Jack. Were you with Mickey Steele? Well, I couldn't have been, because I don't know nothing about it. The night when Pat was killed, and Tony was killed, and Craig was killed. I'm sorry, I've just answered that. If I'm saying that I'm not there, and I don't know nothing about it, how could I have been with anybody? If somebody's saying that they're there, and I'm saying I'm not there, that's just my interpretation. It's the best I can do. Alright, Jack, then, let's just recap. You're saying that just for the last half an hour, what we've been talking about, that you're saying that you were not and have not been to Rettendon. I don't know anything that has been said, I don't know. It's all lies, halfway through you said. Well, it's got to be, I mean, I can't think why Darren is lying. He must be lying. He must have a reason, well, I just don't know. Why would he pick on you then if he's lying, Jack? I mean, it upsets me that someone has implicated me in killing 3 people. I mean, I don't want to carry on talking about it because it's a horrendous thing for someone to actually point me out as killing 3 men. It seems to me, Jack, that we're just getting another reason why you shouldn't answer the questions that are being put to you. We've had various reasons over the last couple of days. Well, can I say this? And I will say this once more. I don't know nothing about it, so I can't answer your questions. Well, you can answer questions like, do you know Mickey Steele, can't you? Yeah, I suppose I could, but you're not. No, Well, yeah, it upsets me to talk about what you're implicating or somebody's implicating. Well, make no mistake, that's what we're implicating as well. Make no mistakes about that, Jack. I'm not trying to say that someone else is just saying this and it's just a tall story or something. What I'm saying is I actually firmly believe the account that we have just given to you with, I believe, good reason. So let's not sort of think it's somebody in another police station just spouting it out and we'll just talk about that. What I'm saying is we are putting this to you because we believe that it is fact, and I'm asking for your comments, Jack. Now, I accept what you say. It is a shocking thing, a very shocking thing. Allegations don't come much stronger than this, right? But we've been asking you questions now, and you're saying to me that you're shocked by it. You've been under arrest now for these offences for 2 days. It's not come straight out of the blue, these allegations. I arrested you, I think, on Tuesday morning, early Tuesday lunchtime-ish, for the 3 murders. And you've been asked since then questions like, do you know Mickey Steele? Do you know Darren? And I take it from the way that you've answered the questions about why should Darren say that you do have some knowledge of Darren Nichols. We're asking you now, do you know Darren Nichols? Well, you started off now, I think, do I have any comments on it? I have no comment. Right, do you know Darren Nichols? I have no comment on this. I'm asking you now whether you know Darren Nichols. That's the question. I'm not saying. I'm making no comment. Right. You said, I think, Jack, that you are shocked by this crime. I think my colleague called it a heinous crime. It is a shocking crime, isn't it? Even more shocking, I suppose, that you should be or have the finger pointed at you. And my colleagues alike were shocked by the violence of it. And I think the media, the press, the newspapers, TV, radio were shocked by it too. In fact, they were so shocked by it that they thought it was national headline news. Now, Don't think I'm being rude here, I'm not. But you're not a hermit, Jack, are you? You watch the TV? Because I think I remember you saying you like the TV, but not too keen on the newspapers. Do you not recall this being on the news, on the TV, in the newspaper? See, my way of thinking is that if this is a total pack of lies, Jack, I would be pulling my hair out to try and think, where was I on the 6th of December? Because I can remember it being on the TV, I can remember where I was. But you sit there and look at me, Jack, and you don't say anything. Shocking, shocking crime. But you don't know where you were that night. These three were friends of yours. They were people you knew, were they not? I have no comment on the subject. If we go back to the account that Mr. Nichols was giving, you still, Nichols, are all in that VW Passat. You drive out of the lane, he says you turn left towards Rolfe, and generally after some driving you end up at a public house which we think is the Traveller's Joy, or it may have been renamed the Hungry Horse Public House, near Raleigh Railway Station. Do you recall that? Have you ever been to that pub near Rettendon? Nichols states that with you and Steele in the car, he parks next to Mickey's red Toyota Hilux, which is there already in the public house car park. Mick gets out of the car, he takes his overalls off in the car park. I think you had a bit of blood on you, Jack, didn't you? You had to sort that out. Did you have some surgical gloves? Did you wear surgical gloves that night, Jack? Do you have access to surgical gloves for work to stop your hands getting messed up? Do you ever wear surgical gloves in your work, Jack? Okay, that was the buzzer sounding. We're near the end of the tape. The date is still Thursday, the 16th of the 5th, 96, and the time by my watch is now 21:30 hours. This interview is now concluded.